Doing another wet fly here today. This is the Mascot. This is also from Ray Bergman's book Trout. And I wanted to do this fly today because it's similar to another wet fly that I did a little while ago called the Bisset. It's just a little different variation on it. And I have some others that I'm going to be doing that are similar to this as well. This, like the Bisset, has the yellow tip in it and a peacock body and a slate wing, but this has a scarlet tail to it and just a black hackle on the front for the hackle, not a throat. Just another nice little caddis pattern. I thought it was an interesting fly and fun one to tie. So there's the Mascot, and I'll get started tying. So I'll begin the Mascot by placing my hook in the vise. This is a Mustad 3399 and it's size 6. I'm going to debarb the hook and then attach my thread. Because of the yellow tip on this, I'm going to start with a Danville 6.0 in white. Get some wax on my thread. I'm going to attach that about an eye length behind the eye of the hook and run that down to just a little bit past the point of the hook. Here's where I will tie in the tip. The tip is made from yellow floss. I'm using a Danville 4-strand Rayon floss in yellow, and I'm only using 3 strands. Similar to the Bisset that I tied a while back, the tip is going to be made of 2 of these strands, and the third is a security strand to keep it from unraveling. Attach that to the hook. I want to keep it on top of the hook shank, and I'm going to proceed down the bend of the hook about 9 or 10 wraps. Depends on how long you want that tip to be. And then I'm going to come back up to the tie-in point. Separate my strands. I want to select one that is pretty much like that one. I think is right down along the hook shank. I don't want it to kind of overwrap, but I think it would be okay if it did. Remember that the third strand is there for security. So I'm going to wrap these in, overlapping a little bit. Get 4 or 5 wraps in just to give myself a nice bright yellow hot spot. Secure those in. Now I'll bring that third strand forward, right across the top, tying it in, and that gives me that security that that floss won't unravel down the hook shank. Trim that the length of the body. Now, the Mascot does have a tail to it, and it is some Scarlet Hackle. I'm using some goose for this. I'm going to clip out about 3 barbs for this size hook. 4 would probably be fine. 2's, I think, a little bit skinny. 3 to 4 barbs. One of these has a little bit extra in it, so I'm going to peel 1 barb off of there. Get my tips evened up. And then I can tie that in. I want the length of the shank I generally go a little bit longer, maybe from the front of the eye of the hook or from right behind the eye of the hook to the bend. Wrap that in. I'm actually working my way down the hook shank just a little bit because I want to make certain that when I tie all this in, I'm covering up any of these thread wraps back here, especially when I put in the Peacock Herl in just a second. So the body for the Mascot is Peacock Herl. I'm using some Herls off of a tail feather. I've got these 4 of them, and I've got the tips more or less even. I'm going to trim those off. I'm going to tie those in so that the ends are the length of the body. A couple wraps downward. Then I'm going to come forward, collecting these down to the hook shank. So I get a nice full body. I'm just going to use the rotary feature of my vise. Otherwise, my hands, I tend to, when I wrap these around, slide my fingers up the Herl and Floss and ribbing and things like that. And sometimes, especially the Herl, it just fans them out a little bit more than I want. So I find that if I just use the rotary feature here, I get a much smoother body, making certain that I covered up any thread wraps. Wrap almost right up to the eye of the hook. That happens. Lost one there. Let me secure this in a little bit. I could probably just pluck that out, but what I'm going to do is widen that wrap out a little bit and just stretch that kind of up to where the other Herls are at. Now and it broke again. Let's try that one more time. You could also understand, just if it's not giving you the look you want, just undo all of it. It seems like kind of a pain. Oh, okay, well that's 3 times is not good. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and unwrap all of those and tie in some more Herls. I could actually, what I might do is just tie one in real quick. So I've got those other 3 and just remove the one that broke. Probably do all 3 because I'm actually breaking these off. So I've got those 3 nice ones. Take that out. Just going to come back real quick to the end here. I'm going to get a couple more just so that in case that happens again, I'm covered. Again, clipping the tips off those. I'll tie these in. Nice thing with the Herl, you don't have to really be too concerned about a smooth underbody because that Herl's just going to cover it all up. So let's try that again. You do want to stroke these a little bit when you're pulling these up this way because you want all of those under the same tension. Again. think as I brought that thread around the first time, I think I was pulling on these too much, and it just popped that one. I also think it was rather delicate. So there's our Peacock Herl body. I'm going to change over to my black thread now for the wing and the hackle. I'm using a Danville 6/0 in black. Get some wax on my thread. Wrapping backwards a little bit, I'll then clip the tag end of the black and the white. I'm going to wrap back a little bit more. This is where I'll tie in the wing. Got to be careful with this because you're tying in a wing and a hackle. It can very easily get away from you where you're moving further back for the head on that. The wing is just a slate quill. I'm using some goose for this size hook. You could use some duck. Generally like the width of the wing to be about 1/2 to 3/4 the gap of the hook. Not super wide. So I'm cutting my slips here. I've got one cut there. I'm going to peel that off. I've got my other one that's cut there. I'm going to flip that over. I'm going to match up the tips of those and peel that off. I'm going to bring those two tips together. And as you can see, the one on my side is a little bit wider. So I will reach in with my bodkin and peel out a couple of those. I'm going to measure that so the tips go just past the bend, about halfway down the tail. Tie those in. I'll take a look, a couple more wraps to secure it. When I tied those in and put in additional wraps to secure it, I moved forward on the hook shank. Again, I don't want to move back because that head can get too large. Those look good. So we'll trim away the excess here. Nice and close. Now I'm going to smooth this area out here for our hackle. The hackle is just a black hackle on this. Separate those a little bit. And I'll separate the tail. They tend to kind of zip together a little bit as you are tying the fly, and that's fine. I don't mind them being together. They're going to swim how they're going to swim, but especially while you're tying the fly, I don't mind them staying together. So the hackle is just a black hackle, soft hackle. I prefer the soft hackle. This is just some black hen that I have, and I prefer that over, say, a rooster saddle. They're a little stiffer, but it's up to you. I'm going to take a medium-sized feather. I want the barbs here when they're palmered in to extend about to the tip. I'm going to attach my hackle pliers to the tip of that so that I can then stroke this back, exposing the tip of that feather. Cut that tip off. So I have a little triangle to tie that in. I want to secure that in, leaving my thread right there at the back of the head, and then I'll palmer this in. I'll get 2, maybe 3 wraps in. Actually going to bring my thread down right there. Yeah, I'll get 3 wraps in here as I'm right up behind the eye of the hook. Stroking that back, I'm going to bring my thread up behind the eye and then work my way back just a little bit to create the head of the fly, and at the same time bind in all of those barbs the back of the head. The rest of that rachis here I can get a hold of and generally just pop that off. If it doesn't pop off, go ahead and cut that off. Now we'll smooth this up a little bit just so we have a nice transition from the body and that hackle down to the head, or I should say the eye of the hook. Flattening my thread out, I'm going to flatten this and then do a 8 or 9 turn whip finish. That's 8 or 9 turn whip finish. Got 7 on that one. This is going to have some head cement on it as well as some lacquer, so whether it's 7, 8, or 9 turn whip finish, I don't think is important as much as you're using the flattened thread and the whip finish to just come down on the head and smooth it out a little bit. A little bit of head cement. And like I said, a couple of layers of black lacquer on that, and the Mascot is done. It's another interesting wet fly. I've got a number of wet flies that I'm doing that are nice caddis imitations, and they're all kind of similar in that this is similar to the Bisset with the yellow tag and the Peacock Herl and the Slate wing. They're just kind of fun to do. I enjoy them. That is the Mascot, and thanks for watching today.
Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.